Hello, my name is Joseph Bishton, and welcome to my presentation about stretch and challenge in the classroom. Mostly my crux of the research is sort of about how to get the balance right with my students, so how to not overload them, but how to not be too relaxed, essentially. So to start off with, so what is stretch and challenge? So stretch and challenge in short is a pedagogical approach to teaching which involves specifically crafting your lessons to the individual. So it's the aim of the teacher not only to teach, but to ensure that their students are learning and being able to apply their acquired knowledge to wider tasks. So especially in the case of creative subjects like mine, it feels like a lot of students kind of arrive to the class and they're sort of like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do, or what's the point, or whatnot. So the reason why I chose stretch and challenge is because it really sort of links to this and this sort of wider studies of it. And stretch and challenge models are made with the belief that students will always benefit from being stretched intellectually. So whether they're just going with the flow, so to speak, stretch and challenge is a way of sort of shaking that chamber up a little bit. And strategies for stretch and challenge techniques could be imbued in the very expectations teachers set, but also in the specific tasks that they give their students. So it's both. First we'll talk about the teaching standards. Number 2 and 5 is what I kind of mostly looked at. So first, to promote good progress and outcomes by pupils. So I was particularly interested in the attainment, progress and outcomes, how pupils learn, and encouraging pupils to take responsibility for their own work and study. This is all just right at the heart of the research that I've been going for, so it seemed only natural. And then adapt teaching to respond to the strengths and needs of pupils, so how to differentiate appropriately. Throughout this presentation, you'll kind of see that as a common theme, differentiation between the students. It seemed like a lot of the reading I did kind of linked to that. Adapt teaching, I think that's part and parcel, and then a clear understanding of the needs of all pupils. So that's another thing which you feel as a teacher that you kind of innately have that ability to do so. But well, I surprised myself. I think I did, as you guys will understand a bit later. So first, we're going to talk about Seineger's view on stretch and challenge for tacit tasks. Okay, so here we've got the comfort, the stretch, and the panic zone. These are just really good sort of interpretations of kind of a child's psyche going through learning. So to start with, remember when I'm talking about these, I'm talking specifically about tacit tasks and how these apply to comfort, stretch, and panic. So first, the comfort zone. If a student is unchallenged with a tacit task, they're probably just repeating a muscle memory. Okay, and this is what a lot of people like to do in art. They'll like to retreat to a comfortability and other subjects, obviously, but it's a muscle memory thing when it comes to art, and that's what I kind of keep my eyes peeled in terms of the comfort zone. Stretch zones, so student has been challenged to apply learnt skill to a more technically challenging activity. So for art, this could be using cross-hatching skills, but with a paintbrush, or using a paintbrush to create different marks. These were some of the techniques I ended up doing. So this is just sort of the stretch zone is you're not completely pushing them completely out of the comfort zone, because that will end up in the panic zone, but you're sort of you're testing them just enough that they're applying their own skills that they've learned in a way which really solidifies the knowledge. And then yes, the panic zone, so the student has experienced failure and subsequently hasn't become an independent learner, so they're freaking out too much. And I'm sure a lot of people say this about their own subjects, but it really does feel with art, the panic zone is bigger than most art. It's a very personal experience, a personal thing to do and replicate, and when you get judged on that, or when you fail on that, or on your own perceived shortcomings, really easy to end up in the panic zone, as I'm sure mine and yourself would have experienced at some point. So yeah, now we're going to talk about stretch and challenge as applied to ideas generation and artist response. So this is sort of the other side of the coin in art, because obviously we've got the tacit skills, we've got learning drawing, sketching, painting, all that. But this is when it comes to like artist response and sort of the more, I guess you could say, academic side. That might not be the right terminology, but yeah. So for the comfort zone in terms of ideas generation, so the student is unchallenged and they're most likely copying ideas instead of mimicking. A student has not evidenced understanding. So the distinction I have there between copying and mimicking is mimicking comes with an understanding as to why the artist was doing that, as opposed to just purely doing it, I suppose. I think a good example would be, like, imagine if you watched an interpretive dance. That interpretive dance was about sadness and longing. but you instead just thought it was a very funky dance and you just decided to copy it without actually realizing that it was an interpretation on somebody's grief. So that's what I mean by copying and mimicking. Okay, so the stretch zone, so this is dependent on year group. Okay, but students are challenged to evidence their understanding of the artist by replicating and repurposing their style. So this gets exponentially more and more difficult as the years go on. But yeah, in terms of ideas generation and the stretch zone, that's sort of where we're trying to aim for our students is yeah, linking back to the copying and mimicking. They're mimicking, okay, they're looking at the artist and they're actually understanding. And then yeah, we've got the panic zone. So a student doesn't understand the artist's motives or techniques, and they're blaming their own lack of skill or chastising the artist. So I've had it where students usually state, I can't draw, or claim to just dislike the artist as soon as they're met with frustration. So yeah, the panic zone in terms of ideas generation happens when there's a lack of understanding, and that's definitely it. If that ever happens, it's probably my fault as a teacher, because I've pushed the boat out too much, so to speak, and I haven't made the artist relatable enough for them. I haven't run into this that much, but there are definitely times, especially when you're talking about the more archaic artists, where students just don't resonate and they instantly switch off because it's a long lost art of a Picasso or something, or they're generally just an auteur, and it's really difficult to convince year sevens that they have that ability, even though they do. So the panic zone, so the pitfalls of stretch and challenge and how it creates desirable difficulties. So this was linked with my research from Bjork. So Bjork and others have stated that different methods for stretch and challenge are labeled desirable difficulties. So I find these very useful to keep in mind when designing my own strategies to avoid pushing students into this panic zone that I'm speaking about. So referring back to those two, I kind of, in art, I think we've got two different types of panic zones that I've just said, but it's really easy to push them into both, even if it's in the other type of subject. So even if you're doing a tacit sort of subject and you kind of bring the academics into it, it's very easy to confuse them. So what I do, yeah, I would kind of chunk and make these challenges bite-sized and have them as hurdles for my students. So rather than presenting them as a mammoth task that would dishearten them, I was trying to create desirable difficulties, create reasons for them to get excited about using the information that I've already given them. So to list, this was spacing learning sessions rather than grouping them together. We've got testing learners on materials rather than simply restudying them. So this involved just kind of more complex questioning, but in a more lighthearted way. And the strategy I did with this as well, especially the older years, is I was trying to just sort of isolate it into little tables, because I've got quite a lot of nervous students, and it's quite difficult to get them speaking unless they're kind of in their group. And then learners are encouraged to generate their own target material actively rather than reading or consuming information passively. So this is just a case of getting their own artist research, finding the things that they enjoy, which is, funny enough, surprisingly difficult a lot of the time. People, I think when you're representing the information that you want to study, you kind of represent yourself. So you kind of leave yourself pretty, what's the word, sort of... you put a target on yourself for the other students because you're revealing your identity, and that can be a very sensitive issue. The other thing was varying the setting in which the learning took place. That was one of the things Bjork was talking about. I wasn't actually able to do that. There was a few room changes during this research, but it didn't specifically help. It just sort of made them a bit more confused and wiry. So it wasn't really the optimum strategy for that. So I'll skip over that. But presenting learning materials in a less organized form. So this is the one that I find quite interesting because it specifically resonates with myself as a learner, maybe not the majority. But yeah, there's a sort of clinical aspect to teaching, and the PowerPoint even right now that we're watching, but it probably doesn't have enough stimulus for you as an audience, maybe. So maybe your attention might be drifting, but it definitely would be for a child. So yeah, trying to make it a bit more sporadic, a bit more kind of natural, having images in front of the children for them to pick up and learn about. It just works a lot better. Okay, it just makes it less of an arduous experience because I guess prediction creates boredom, and when kids can predict the kind of the speed at which my lessons are going to go, it's just not very fun, is it really? And that's what it's about, really. It's kind of making it fun to learn, essentially. So all these methods do is recontextualize ways of learning the students are already doing, but craft them in a way which makes the journey to enrichment more manageable. Essentially, kind of what I'm getting at. So yeah, now let's talk about the comfort zone. So the pitfalls of stretch and challenge and how to reward success. Okay, so the comfort zone is all too familiar place in art and design, so many students feel intimidated by new materials and are afraid to create something, quote marks, ugly with them. So, and I'm in a all-girls school right now, and that's especially true. Okay, so identifying students who are in the comfort zone is easy. It's just a case of noticing lack of progress as projects move forward and getting them out of the comfort zone. Well, that's an entirely different job, essentially. But yeah, through formative assessment, I was really able to see who was kind of reverting back to old tactics, just old lulls in their creativity, and sort of pushing them past that. And so, when challenging a student in the comfort zone, there's always a chance to cause an information overload. Talking about the panic zone earlier. But what it's about, it's about commenting them, saying stuff like "it's working already" or "so it already looks great," because these are phrases I've just heard all too often. So challenging them in the wrong way will usually be met with frustration. And so this is why the strategy I employed with calling kind of tasks creative challenges, sort of kind of relating it a bit more to them. So I said, like, you've done an incredible job with these oil pastels, so how can we use them with watercolor? Or what order would you like to apply the materials, oil pastel or watercolor first? And maybe through the screen that might not seem too much of a interesting question, but when the materials are there in front of you, and because you're there and you're a student and you love your work and you really want to create a great thing, that's a sort of quite a fun puzzle for you to work out because you're passionate about it. You really want to get to the communication stage. So yeah, after I challenge them like this, I then allow them to discover them for themselves which order the materials demanded. So this has actually involved me sometimes biting my tongue and watching them fail a little bit because, especially with materials, it's just good to see when it's working or when it's not working. And then the next task would just be an independent one and would allow them to discover for themselves the material properties. So this is just completely not handheld at all, but it's allowing them to kind of use the information that they have already. And it's complying with their own sensibilities. So it's still referring to the comfort zone enough for them to not get overloaded. But you're not, it's not a huge shove. We're not trying to shove them out of this comfort zone. We're trying to slowly push them out, essentially. Okay, so yeah, this is the most interesting part of the research for me, I found. So yeah, the biases, so pitfalls of stretch and challenge in terms of our own perception. So this was from the Claxton Meadows research, and it really opened my eyes. Their book's entitled The Routledge International Companion to Gifted Education. And so they posed the thought experiment of two children. Challenge the reader on their notions of class and how they affect our perception of someone. We talk about two different students. I mean, these images are kind of relatively similar and simple enough for me to explain without taking up too much time. So on the left, we've got a very bright looking girl. She's giving us thumbs up. She's giving us affirmation. She's got clear skin and she's giving us direct eye contact. Okay, and then on the right, we have a boy looking quite sullen and sad. And obviously the lighting's quite bad and he's looking downwards. And obviously that's connoting sadness, maybe anger even. But yeah, so these identified attributes, they're typically associated with brightness and how it's connected with a well-socialized background. So eagerness equates to confidence. And if you're alert and energetic, that's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. If you're adult-oriented, so if you're this girl on the left, you've probably had a pretty socialized existence, we can assume, okay, is that they're sitting down for dinner time, they're enjoying life, they're being asked questions by their parents. And I think it's just so interesting, this part of the task, because it had me really thinking, because I had a list of these students that I wanted to stretch and challenge, and I stopped for a second and I thought, no, these are all students that are highly socialized. They've got great advantages in life. Thank God, I want every child to have great advantages. But there are definitely overlooked students in my class, and I consider myself quite a liberal person with a wide outlook on life, but I definitely have made a mistake. I think I've definitely not realized my own biases, and I've applied this into it. Yeah, so all these attributes, they're adjacent with a positive upbringing of a child with lots of opportunities. But as teachers, we just can't assume that every child's lifestyle at home offers the same advantages. So this way of thinking actually opened up my research opportunities, essentially, and made me overlook silent students, pretty much. So you'll find one of the students later was specifically picked up because of this, because of me realizing that their progression wasn't specifically amazing throughout the course, but their skill and their dedication was there. It's just the eye contact and the bubbliness and the hello sir and whatnot just wasn't there, and it's really just, it's not their fault, and I shouldn't be judging them for it, essentially. So yeah, this is me choosing the students. So students were chosen with a variation of year group in mind. So first we'll talk about the year 7 one. So yeah, this description here. reading verbatim, I do apologize. So very talkative and misbehaves a lot, otherwise highly skilled in 2D drawings, but struggles with 3D. So their project was students start by doing artist research of Hundertwasser, and then they are given a chance to design their own panel in response to his work. And until they use all the skills learned prior to create an architectural sculpture inspired by Hundertwasser's work. We've got student B, year 8, highly socialized and smiley student, hyper-focused and always finishing their work quickly, which is beautiful. And so we're doing a pencil-based self-portrait project where students practice drawing facial features and then use those skills to create a realistic drawing of themselves. And then year 9, so this is the one that I was referring to before, very quiet, doesn't even chat with her friends much, very, very, very good at painting and drawing, but burns out quickly when struggling. And so the project is to create an illustrated food recipe page and then create a fully painted sculpture of your meal and snack. So it gets more, I feel by year 9 is, I think, is where the sort of the meat of my research came from. But it's interesting all throughout. So yeah, well, first we'll start about my strategy with student A. So this is the TV show box set strategy, which I found quite interesting. So my first hurdle, student A was difficult to strategize for as she experiences burnout and frustration quite quickly. And as you can see on the left below, her color blending skills are incredible. I mean, just take a little look at the mix of that. For year 7, that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, as you can see, that's also her comfort zone. So her color blending and line control, she enjoys doing that. 2D work is nothing stressful for her at all. And so first we started with stretch. So there was quite a lot of tone missing from this at first, and I challenged her to look at her 2D panels and over 2 lessons kind of work out what extra stuff to do. And the reward for this was, as I say, the sneak peek of the next lesson, okay, the TV box set strategy. So which is just incredible, really, to be able to kind of rethink of a premiere or a learning objective as sort of like a plot hook or a kind of cliffhanger. It's really inspired. It's a great way of thinking of the students as being people you empathize with, but also a kind of a target market and audience, so to speak. So yeah, I kind of had her look at her own work, and she came to her own conclusion about this tonal work because she's an incredible independent learner, and she was able to do that. But then yeah, let's move on to attempt 1 and attempt 2. So this was what she started with when we moved to 3D, and yeah, it's interesting because I think the reason why she set her scope so low with this mushroom, it's not a bad mushroom at all, it was actually quite an interesting form if you think about how it's been pieced together, but it's flat. It hasn't got the patterns or the colors or anything from her previous drawing. You can see that little mushroom for it. That's what she used as the excuse to create this. And so, well, I think it's just quite interesting to see the difference because when I then, pardon me, when I then challenged her with attempt 2 to move on. It was kind of about having her let loose. I was kind of trying to make it seem like the failure was completely fine. There's nothing wrong with kind of creating an awkward, weird piece because you and your friends can sort of giggle about it. And I did that by showing kind of other students' work as well. I was one person, her little like Eiffel Tower looking thing snapped and drooped over, but we decided to sort of like fix it to like look sort of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, kind of lean into the comedy of it. So yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting outcome. It's kind of why I've added it, because you can sort of see this creative journey going throughout from the design to attempt 2. Like you've got expression in that final one. There's a looseness to it. For someone that draws so accurate, it's incredible. It's worth me probably elaborating a bit more on the TV show box set strategy. So this is Speakman and Warwick's technique of designing a scheme of work similar to how a TV show could write itself. So as I said earlier, learning objective plenaries, cliffhangers. So TV shows, they're a menagerie of complex characters and B plots is what they explained. And the way you're doing it is you're sort of simplifying and allowing it that the audience can consume it or whatnot. It's similar as well to sort of advertisers and sort of thinking about attention spans. Just to reiterate an inspired idea, and I think everyone should be learning kind of different ways to kind of rethink about schemes of work like this. So yeah, let's talk about strategy 2. So yeah, for student B. So this was kind of mostly about avoiding burnout while keeping the lesson challenging. Student A has a habit of giving up as soon as the technique is not going well. This is kind of a common thing in girls' schools, it seems. So to minimize the chance of burnout, I kind of limited her options, limited different ways of, because I think people try and color blend, and obviously when you're color blending, it's involving multiple different techniques. You've kind of got line, tone, form, all of this coming together, materials control. So limiting it down to pencil was my first strategy. And also, student A's table weren't allowed to use rubbers and had to hold their pencils loosely at first to sketch with. And by giving student B more options to experiment and less excuses to chastise herself, she was able to overcome the hurdle of her own ego, essentially, and allow herself to learn. And so, the challenge part of this. So I noticed student A had avoided drawing her teeth. You can see on the right that fabulous drawing. It's funny. The one on the left is just, you can just see the lack of confidence in the drawing. It's just really interesting. I asked her, verbalize your fears. Tell me why you don't want to draw the teeth, and she said they just look white and scary. Pretty innocent enough, as fair enough. And she can't draw them neat enough. So what I did then was I showed her Atelier style, and I challenged her to draw in that way, which is essentially, in layman's terms, it's kind of, you're following the gestures of your drawing. So it's kind of like scribbling, almost like a wire sculpture, and then you can rub out stuff at the end. It's a very sort of low stakes way of drawing, and the way I was teaching her was meant to be very loose and whatnot, and lack of rubbers as well. So it's sort of, this is where, if we look at the attempt 4 on the right, you can see where she's probably worked in, and that's because of that lack of rubbers, essentially. And so, by showing them a carefree way of drawing, I minimise any fears and failures by explaining drawing needs to look ugly first, which is sort of my philosophy in teaching right now, is to try and get rid of the preciousness. And we can see the difference in quality between these two drawings is night and day. So notice how the tonal range is way more confident. There's no pencil smudging, which is another thing. Challenging kids not to do any pencil smudging is very, very difficult, because that's just a comfort zone and a half, because it just creates tonal value just straight away without any material control. And the proportions were relatively more correct. So this all came from a happy learning environment where there's no judgments of failure. So failure in my classroom is phrased as experimentation. So when they're like, it doesn't look great, I'm like, yet. Not yet. So really, it's all linking back to this comfort zone, and the pencil smudging is just really, it's a hilariously illustrative way of doing that. Also, hilariously enough, you've got another one of overdrawing eyes in school. So you can really see in the left one, the eyes are way more overworked than the rest, and that is because of the comfort zone. They're way more comfortable kind of going around a shape that they've seen the most in their lives, because we make eye contact more than anything, really. Interesting stuff. Okay, strategy 3 for student C. So this is noticing potential and nurturing independent learners was sort of the main aim of this. Going back over student C, she never puts her hands up or asks questions, and she keeps to herself. She's not socialized as other children because of unfortunate circumstances. And I found myself only noticing student C after an exemplar as an exemplar learner, after 4 or more lessons with her, and after reading that research and just kind of opening my eyes a little bit more, kind of becoming a bit more broad-minded. So this strategy is more of an allusion to my own failings as a teacher, and a strategy to combat against this by following a framework to combat bias, essentially. So if anything, most of the development, you can see this donut is sort of a metaphor for myself as a teacher, becoming hopefully a bit better. Throughout the project, student C had completed every task to a great level, and her formative assessments weren't signaling anything that was wrong to me, essentially. It was only when I questioned her about her next step she'd be taking, with the donut pictured above, this is on the left, that I noticed a problem. So student C wasn't even actively engaging with the learning from the beginning. She was a master of disguise, essentially. She knew when to nod along. She knew the right things to say, because she was listening, and she was parroting, essentially. But she lacked an answer, and instead just repeated the criteria I'd give her on the side of the board. So I'd ask her to elaborate. I'd challenge in that thing. I do kind of Socratic questioning, asking and linking it back to herself. Why do you want to create this? Even with a simple thing like a donut, because we were talking about the illustration page at first, and I'm like, why is it you want to do donuts? She said she likes donuts. Fair enough, okay, cool. That could be a really simple baseline thing, but we go in a little bit more about that. Okay, we think about what donuts mean, sort of what type of people eat them. Sort of, it's a comfort food. It's a happiness kind of involved with it. And so, another strategy involved asking her to get an image of her favorite piece of art on Google Images. And so it didn't really matter what medium, even if it was 3D connecting to this, or food. And then went through the first 2 of my success criteria to give her a mental framework to work off of. So she'd already repeated it to me, but I'm now like saying it to her, because I don't want her copying, I want her mimicking. I'm knowing why she's saying these words. And so then I asked her to identify attributes of the painting that she showed me and that she resonated with, and to link them with this criteria. So it was a really simple interaction, but one that considered previous interests, prior knowledge, and challenged students to understand the underlying structures of the success of the painting. So yeah, it's just it's really that was sort of my technique with her in general, was just kind of just to have more conversation and talk a bit more and relate it back to herself as a person, because I think she was just very used to being sort of is the word autonomous, maybe sort of a bit robotic in school, and just her teachers are nodding her along, and we're all sort of very happy because she's doing the work to a good degree. But yeah, this strategy three for student C, this was me really kind of learning where I need to focus my lens as a teacher, and not just go for these typical notions that people have on class and brightness, and just realizing that like, well, every student kind of has their own value, even if they're hiding it, you know. It's interesting. So yeah, let's talk about the conclusion. So what went well and what went wrong. We'll start with what went well, the positive, okay, and then we'll end up on what went wrong, because if anything, that's sort of where we learn from the most, really, isn't it? So yeah, so to talk first about students. So what went well? So students enjoyed seeing the success that their experiments yielded. Getting out of the comfort zone is liberating, and I saw greater kind of responses to the work because of that, when they felt a bit more calm and relaxed to create work. So yeah, eureka moments were created when students had worked it out for themselves, quote marks. So e.g., they were correctly and independently accessing the prior knowledge of my schemes of work, but the way I'm phrasing my questions, the way I'm asking them, the way I'm celebrating their success, it is theirs. It's purely theirs. I am nothing but a facilitator for it, and I want them to believe that. That's the main illusion of my lessons. I want them to believe that I'm nothing more than an observer of their success, because well, we've all got pride like that, haven't we? I fostered problem-solving skills. I feel like I did a really good job of challenging my students and allowing them to think about their own work in multiple different aspects. And I got students to verbalize and communicate and become more confident with their learning, and this subsequently become better teachers themselves. So sort of peer-to-peer learning with that. I'm sort of blessed in the way that schools, people form friend groups, and so they gravitate to people kind of similar to them. So sometimes you can kind of chunk tables together and sort of do a bit of like a blanket response between one or two students that are relatively similar, or at least kind of start with one and then bring the technique to the other, to sort of see if it works. And stretch challenge in itself is a form of formative assessment, and it allows the teacher a better perspective on their student progress. So it just helped with the marking, really, in general. I just had a lot better. I was able to give feedback a lot more efficiently after doing these sort of techniques, because I knew the student better, and really that's sort of links right back to the start with that being the crux of the thing. It's individual response to individual students, because we are all just individual people. And yeah, so what went wrong? So some students see my stretch and challenge techniques as personal attacks. So it can be very a personal thing. Critiquing someone's creations in the wrong way, it can push them into the panic zone. So to avoid this, always frame critiques towards the student's knowledge rather than their technique. So their knowledge will be informed by their method and outcome. I think that this is just something that I wish I had an amazing, concise answer to, but that is really just the case. It's that art is very personal, same as dance, same as drama. You're really putting yourself out there, and you're making yourself very vulnerable in front of the teacher, and it's just something. It's about creating a safe space, really. That seems to be the kind of the general blanket rule for that, and just being smiling and happy. And having fun with the work. I'm not there, and I'm like, okay, if people haven't got an amazing 5 different tonal range of their drawing, they are going to be chastised. It's the complete opposite energy to that, and yeah. And so biases. I've talked a lot about this, but yeah, sometimes I won't know a student that requires my extra challenges because of notions of class, and I need to be more open-minded and forgiving in order to be more efficient as a teacher. And that's just something that just needs to be remembered by every teacher, because we all kind of think we're the good guys and don't really realize when we're not doing the right thing, when we're overlooking certain students. And it's even more ironic because I myself was that student. I was very, very, very quiet. I really loved art and I just got on with it. I need to right that wrong, even though I sort of coasted through my primary school education. And then secondary is sort of where my passion came from, because I learned that teachers had so much to offer. like myself, hopefully. So yeah, and then finally, students might accidentally be ousted from their group with special attention. So individual challenges should not be a reward for exemplar work, and rather a student's chance to demonstrate further capabilities to themselves. So yeah, I've had with one student where I've had 2 lessons in a row now where I've picked up her work and shown it around the class because I'm just so proud. She's just listened to everything I've said and she's done a lot more, and a lot of other students have a lot to learn from her. But what I've accidentally done is othered her, and I've created jealousy between the students. So yeah, I've got to, I think, framing success as something that's a bit more kind of fluid, rather than this is right and I want you guys to do this. It doesn't necessarily work. So yeah, it's been an incredibly interesting project. I'm really glad I got the chance to do it, and I really hope that in the future I can develop my stretch and challenge techniques more, and apply them to everyone. You know, I think these techniques don't have to be applied to exemplar students. These are very socialized, good techniques for the people, and yeah, that'll be it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, have a wonderful time. Cheers.